Grace and peace, everybody. Grace and peace. This is Minister Hakeem Everett Gillamel of IGOPE, Alpha and Omega, Manhood Restored. I got a question I want to ask my brethren out there. What is it that helps you acknowledge your emotional needs? What is it that helps you acknowledge your emotional needs? Too often, we as men hold within ourselves dormant the emotional cries, the emotional affections that we want to share with others, but we sometimes feel that we're too manly to do it. And so when we're feeling like we're too manly to do it, what happens is we hold within us a conflict that cannot be told in words. And so what I want you to understand today is I want you to know, and I want you to examine yourself to find what is it that helps you to acknowledge your emotional needs. You see, in the Bible, in Psalms 22:14, the psalmist is letting us know that he says, "My heart is like wax. It is melted in the midst of my bowels." So when we deal with that and we actually pay heed to what the psalmist is telling us, he's telling us that there's a heart problem. And too many of us as men are dealing with heart problems. We're dealing with hurt. We're dealing with past wounds. We're dealing with unexpectations being met. And sometimes what happens is we need an outlet to allow these things that has troubled us, that's causing us to have all kinds of ailments, to be released, to be distracted and destroyed. And so what happens is we have to come into the acknowledgement that there has to be something or someone or some place that we can acknowledge our emotional needs. And this is why God has given us the IGOPE, Alpha and Omega, Manhood Restored, from actually being able to address these issues, address these problems, because today man needs to be restored. And so I want to share something with you. The psalmist is telling us, he says, what is the harm in keeping your fears and your emotional needs to yourself? That's a question, because what happens is we become used to hiding the fears and the needs because we feel that there's no other or no one else that can actually understand this conflict that is going on within our minds and in our hearts. But we have to understand that to do that is to basically become a prisoner within our own mind and our own body. And too often we find brothers and sisters at the same time becoming prisoners to their own emotional needs. And what happens is we have to understand as men, we are not in position to actually help ourselves when we're actually having a conflict what's going on that's inside of us. So we have to understand and come to an understanding that there is something and someone that can help us to acknowledge our emotional needs. You see, the psalmist is telling us, he says here, that some men turn to alcohol, some men turn to drugs, some men try to do it in their own effort, some even turn to prostitutes, some even turn to their own emotions seeking help. But the psalmist wants us to know that when we begin to learn how to overturn these things and find the help that we need, find a manhood being restored group or a Bible study ministry that actually addresses the men that needs help, then we can make a big difference in our own lives. We have to understand, people, that today men are being called by God to get back into their rightful places, to take up their banner, break the bonds, and fellowship with other men, that we can remake man into the image and after the likeness of God himself. See, man naturally was born to be a man of God. He was naturally born to be a God man. And this is why we read in the scripture where it says that greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. It also tells us that what he, Jesus, has done, we can do and even greater. I know some of us cannot even fathom to think there's something greater that we can do. But I want you to understand, as we at IGOPE, Alpha and Omega, Manhood Restored, begin to go through Dr. Eric Mason's book, Manhood Restored, how the gospel make men whole, we can get back into holiness and we can get back to wholeness. So with that being said, I'm looking for you as a man in this area or from over the world to join into what we're doing as we begin to imitate God on purpose eternally, becoming godly successful by allowing the gospel to change us and renew us back to our rightful design in which God created us in the beginning. Peace and blessings, y'all. Don't forget to subscribe to the book page of IGOPE, Alpha and Omega, Manhood Restored. And don't forget also to come and join us as we meet monthly. Brothers from all walks of life, breaking strongholds and barriers. Peace and blessings.